From the Bay Area's local news station, we begin now with breaking news.
Now at 9, curfew orders are in effect in at least 3 Bay Area cities as protests continue.
For the sixth night, protests have erupted all across the nation in the wake of the killing of George Floyd at the hands of a former Minneapolis police officer. This is new video coming into our newsroom tonight of fires being started near the White House as tensions rise.
Good evening, I'm Ken Wayne.
And I'm Pam Moore. Tonight, police are out in force as some businesses have already been hit by looters. Among those locations where police are out in force, the scene at Walnut Creek earlier this evening. And you can see on the streets of this suburban community, police out in force for sure. Looters hit several stores at the Broadway Plaza in downtown Walnut Creek. Some of the stores hit include Lululemon, Ray-Ban, a liquor store there, and a Macy's, as well as other stores.
KRON4's Dan Thorne live for us tonight in Walnut Creek where that activity took place. And Dan, we also understand there are reports that a woman was shot there. Dan Thorne live for us tonight in Walnut Creek. Dan, we'll keep an eye on things there. Thank you very much. Shortly after that vandalism started in Walnut Creek earlier today, we talked to the mayor, Luella Haskew. This was her reaction to the looting, which has been seen around the country.
I can tell you that I am really angry at the people that have chosen to take what should be a moment in our country for us to look at race relationships and how we can make real giant improvements, and they've turned it into a criminal experience that none of us should have to go through. This is just broad vandalism and unacceptable on every standard that I can think of.
Meantime, the Bay Area is bracing for another night of protests. There was a peaceful protest around Lake Merritt in Oakland today. Peaceful protests were also held in downtown Napa this afternoon, and on the Bay Bridge there were some traffic delays with protesters blocking ramps in San Francisco while holding signs in peaceful protest over the killing of George Floyd.
Meantime, a tally by the Associated Press shows at least 4,100 people across the nation have been arrested over the days of protests since the killing of George Floyd. Nearly 40 cities across 26 states have announced curfews tonight. Some 5,000 National Guard members have been activated in 15 states, and in the nation's capital, in Washington, D.C., another 2,000 are prepared to activate if they are needed. Officials are hoping that setting these curfews will help to calm things down. Our Noel Bello joins us now with more on where the Bay Area stands in terms of the curfews. Despite those curfews, police departments all around the Bay Area are on alert tonight.
Our Jonathan McCall is in the newsroom with more on that. Jonathan.
Yeah, Pam, Noel just touched on a few of those, but we just got some video into our newsroom from San Jose where a curfew has now been in effect for about 30 minutes or so.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. BART is closing more of its stations until further notice because of what the agency is calling civil disturbance. Tonight, BART announced it's closing the Walnut Creek, Lafayette, Hayward, and Bay Fair station in San Leandro. Last night, it announced closures at Powell Street and Civic Center in San Francisco and 12th Street, Oakland City Center. Montgomery Station in the city has just been added to this list. Trains are still running, but they will run through those 3 stations in San Francisco until further notice.
We are joined now by Bill Hing. He is a professor of law and migration studies at the University of San Francisco.
Professor, we just were able to chat for a moment before we came on the air here, and we were talking about how we've seen this routine before.
Good night.
We want to take you now to Charlotte, North Carolina to see what the situation looks like there. And basically, this is kind of the same scene played out in cities across the country. A group of police standing by, waiting to clear the streets. Let's see if the camera moves and can show us what's on the other side. If there are protesters, and there they are on that side of the street. So Charlotte, Virginia Beach, Virginia. What else have we shown you tonight, Pam? We're showing that Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've been all over the place and basically just changed the name of the city, and you get the same picture from each city, including here in the Bay Area. So that is the latest from Charlotte. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Taking another live look outside across the country, a fire burning in Virginia Beach, Virginia, in a trash can. That's the good news. And this is the kind of scene that we've seen across the country as the protests against the killing of George Floyd continue.
Today is the 6th day of protests in response to the killing of Floyd. In some major cities, daytime demonstrations have remained peaceful. Others have announced nighttime curfews in the hopes of a quieter night.
Daryl Forges reports from Minneapolis.
And if I could do anything to bring Mr. Floyd back, I would move heaven and earth to do that. So I'm very sorry.
That is the Minneapolis police chief apologizing to the Floyd family after an arrest by 4 of his officers led to George Floyd's death. Talking to the Floyd family, he said he believes the 3 officers who have not yet been charged are just as responsible for staying silent.
And of course, as you know by now, that death is what sparked global outrage and unrest that started in Minneapolis. Daryl Forges, who just reported on this situation, is live with us now. So Daryl, fill us in on what you've been seeing throughout the night tonight. Tonight, live on KRON4 News at 8 o'clock, we talked to a social commentator, host of CNN's United Shades of America, author, comedian, and Bay Area native W. Kamau Bell. We asked him about the social unrest over George Floyd's killing. A number of black men have been killed unarmed over the last few years. We've seen protests, but nothing like this. What do you attribute this activity to? Why this death with Mr. Floyd is different?
Thank you for having me, Pam. I can't separate this from the moment. We're still in the middle of a global pandemic, and it's easy to forget that because of everything that's going on in the news right now. But people are jobless. Many people are sick. Many people are seeing their people in the community die. And especially the Black and brown community is being hit harder by this global pandemic. And so in the midst of this, there's this feeling of like, we can't even get a break from racism in the middle of a global pandemic. I think you can't separate this from the pandemic.
Kamau, I'm curious about your thoughts about the white interaction in all of this, and it goes both ways, as you know. There are a lot of white people participating in this protest, a lot of white people being blamed for some of the violence and the looting, a lot of white people supporting the cause, a lot of white people, maybe some skeptics, and certainly there are still racists out there, as we all know. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what can a white person do for you in this cause that you think is positive and can make a difference?
I first think they need to start thinking about they're doing it for themselves. Structural and institutional racism hurts all of us. It just hurts Black people the hardest. It hits us the hardest. So I think they need to stop thinking about doing something for the Black community and actually going a more equitable and just society, a society where everyone has access to education and healthcare, and the criminal justice system has equity in it. Is better for all of us. I think white people have to stop getting caught up in what can I do for Black people, or to help them. The other thing I would say is that we also have to, in the Bay Area, there's a long history of protesting. We know not every white person shows up to the protest in the same way, and we can all recognize.
And that's W. Kamau Bell. Tonight we are learning that during Friday night's protests, the White House was put on lockdown. And during the protest, President Trump was briefly taken to the underground bunker. According to a White House official, he was there for a little less than an hour before he was brought back upstairs. It's unclear if the First Lady and their teenage son Barron were also taken down to the bunker. The Secret Service protects the White House and was protecting that building as protesters rallied in the area.
President Trump announced today he is designating Antifa as a terrorist organization, despite many legal experts saying that he does not actually have the authority to do so. Antifa is short for anti-fascists, and it describes a broad militant movement whose political beliefs lean extreme left but do not conform with the Democratic Party's platform. Federal law enforcement officials say that they are aware of outside groups behind some of the property destruction and violence that is occurring across the country. They say those groups are using the cover of the legitimate protesters over the death of George Floyd. And it remains unclear if Antifa specifically is behind any of the recent violence. Some experts say the president does not have the authority to label any domestic organization as terrorists, adding that power only applies to foreign entities.
President Trump's rhetoric during these protests has been heavily criticized. He has called people protesting the death of George Floyd and police brutality thugs. And he also quoted a phrase with racist origins: when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Democrats say the president's language is not helping in any way.
I think there were some unfortunate statements made that were provocative in terms of the outburst of concern that we are seeing.
So you're referring to President Trump's tweets, including the one where he said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts?
No, I'm not paying too much attention to what the president says. I'm talking about the injustice, the knee in the neck.
He should just stop talking. This is like Charlottesville all over again. He speaks and he makes it worse. There are times when you should just be quiet, and I wish that he would just be quiet.
That was Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. She also said she's extremely concerned about people gathering to protest amid the coronavirus pandemic. Bottoms predicts coronavirus cases could significantly rise over the next couple of weeks. Atlanta police say more than 70 people were taken into custody last night.
Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden visited with protesters in Wilmington, Delaware today. He posted a few pictures on social media. Videos of the candidate's Instagram show him wearing a mask, taking photographs with men who appear to be supporters of his, also wearing masks. He wrote that we are a nation in pain right now, but we must not allow this pain to destroy us. As president, I will help lead this conversation, and more importantly, I will listen just as I did today, visiting the site of last night's protests in Wilmington.
And former Vice President Biden might have the strongest election lead since modern polling for the presidency began. That is according to a new survey from ABC News and the Washington Post. It gives Biden a 10-point lead over President Trump among registered voters. That's an edge reflected in dozens of other polls. Collectively, the data suggests Biden's better poised than any presidential challenger in decades. That said, the ABC Washington Post survey shows a 5-point lead for Biden among people certain to vote. It also indicates neither Trump nor Biden has a popularity rating over 50%.